Hollywood needs to stop romanticising chronic illness. Hello friends, how are you doing? Welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to talk to you about something that's been troubling me. I really want to talk about the way that chronic illness and disability is portrayed in pop culture and film and media. So a few nights ago I was trolling through the internet and I found this movie poster for a film that is due to be released sometime early next year, starring Zack and Cody, Cole Sprouse. Just kidding, I know who Cole Sprouse is. The main synopsis of the film is that two teenagers, both with cystic fibrosis, meet in a hospital, they fall in love, and I presume that something bad happens to both of them or one of them. The end. Sound familiar? Now, I'm actually all too familiar with cystic fibrosis. One of my closest friends from university has cystic fibrosis. She had a double lung transplant at the age of 19. She's now 6 years post-op and is doing fantastically, but I know just how cruel and awful this illness can be. Please do not underestimate the seriousness of cystic fibrosis. It's also been in the media and on social media recently with the passing of Wineland. She was a chronic illness advocate here on YouTube and she had cystic fibrosis. She recently went in for her lung transplant and unfortunately didn't make it, and it was all really very sad. So a little bit about cystic fibrosis if you don't know. Cystic fibrosis is a genetic condition and it mostly affects the lungs, but it can also have detrimental impacts on your liver, your pancreas, your kidneys, your gastric tract. It can just wreak havoc. It can be life-limiting and it can also require, in really severe cases, lung transplants, which is what my friend had. My genuine concern for this film that is about to be released is the glaring inconsistencies of the condition that is being portrayed in just the movie poster alone. The film is entitled 5 Feet Apart, except that's not 5 feet apart. So with people with cystic fibrosis, cross-contamination, cross-infection is a real serious possibility. People with CF themselves grow bugs in their lungs, which are normally harmless to healthy people, or people like you and me who don't suffer with CF. But to other people with CF, that can be extremely harmful. And that is why people with CF are not recommended to have relationships with other people with CF or even hang around with friends with CF. So to portray this relationship as a reasonable possibility is at best very irresponsible. Don't get me wrong, I am absolutely all for illness and disability being portrayed in media and movies, but for the sufferers of that condition in the real world, they absolutely deserve an accurate portrayal of their illness. It seems to me that when it comes to chronic illness in film, that the way that they choose to depict it mostly is to tell that story with tragedy. Two terminally ill people meet, fall in love quickly because dying, and then one of them dies. Sad the end. The goal is to elicit sympathy for the main protagonist rather than to encourage and marvel at what they can do. And disabled and chronically ill people in the real world will not thank you for pitying them. Did I fall in love with my boyfriend because I'm chronically sick? No, of course not. I fell in love just like everybody else does, really unremarkably. I watched a film not too long ago called Everything, Everything, and I was really looking forward to seeing this film actually because I felt like I could relate to the synopsis. The main protagonist suffers from something called SCID, which is basically a lack of an immune system, so you can imagine it being a very dangerous, life-limiting condition. Therefore, it meant that she was housebound for her entire life. She falls in love with the boy next door through texting and dramatic long cuts of her staring outside. Having spent a majority of my illness confined to my bed, I can tell you right now that if my neighbour caught me staring at him outside for excessively long periods of time, I can't imagine he'd fall in love with me. Maybe that's just me. Films with accurate portrayal of illness and chronic illness seems few and far between, and it baffles me that directors and producers clearly aren't spending enough time with people really affected by real illnesses. Why? I really hope when it comes to this film that there's more to it than meets the eye, and I really hope that they do portray cystic fibrosis with consideration and with kindness that it deserves, because it is very cruel. It's very cruel. And they could use this opportunity to really highlight a condition and give it some exposure that it deserves. Unfortunately though, I'm not holding my breath. Before I do leave you though, I will leave you with a film that I watched that portrays chronic illness or terminal illness in a really sensitive, considerate light, and that would be 50-50. So the film stars Seth Rogen and Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and Joseph Gordon-Levitt is diagnosed with cancer. I think it is a tumour in the film. And the film doesn't wallow in self-pity. It doesn't focus on the sadness or dramaticness of death or whatever. It's very light-hearted. It deals with it in a very lifelike, real scenario that someone in the real world probably would experience. He just gets on with it. He deals with it like someone would in the real world. He doesn't use his sickness for gain, for pity. It's good. It's really good. And I wish more films were like that when it came to illness. It does seem that there is more interest in chronic illness and sickness as a whole. There's a series that was recently released on Netflix called Afflicted. In my community anyway, people didn't respond to it very well. They didn't like it. They felt like there was a lot of gaslighting going on in it. Certain patients were made to look like they were going crazy, which I actually talked about in my last video about gaslighting. So if you want to go and look at that, go click over here. Wasn't received super well. I personally didn't really like it. I felt it was a bit distasteful, but I'm glad that they're starting to talk about it. They just need to talk about chronic illness accurately now and portray it with sensitivity. Would just really like to be sick because there's nothing romantic about it at all, honestly. Anyway, let me know your thoughts down below. Are there any films with chronic illness or just terminal illness that you've seen that you didn't like? Were there any that you did like? Because I'd be really interested to watch them. I've felt pretty underwhelmed with some of the ones I've seen so far, and there are a lot of us. There are a lot of us crying out to be like portrayed, so come on, portray us, come on. Anyway, on that note, I think I'm going to go. I will see you guys really, really soon. Take care, stay safe, and see you guys. Bye!